What's going on, Winnipeg fans all across the U.S. and Canada? You're now boarding at the Winnipeg terminal. I'm Mike D'Andrea along with Joe Pritchard. And Joe, we have some very big news today, and I'll have you break it and we'll talk just a little bit about it because there's not a lot of details yet.
Yeah, but there's been names thrown around on this, but we're not gonna name names here yet because there's still developments happening with it. But long story short is the sexual assault allegations from the 2018 Canadian World Juniors team. Uh, that story took another turn today. London police are asking five people involved to surrender to them in the near future. I'm sure that if you're watching this, you probably already know about this, but we'd be remiss not to bring it up and make mention of it, given that that news is breaking the same day we're running with this.
Absolutely. And like you said, we don't want to name the names just because we don't want to circulate any rumors that may or may not be true. So it is a developing story. And of course, next week, it's likely that we may have at least a few more details and we'll be able to dive into the latest, of course. But again, we're not here at the Winnipeg terminal to spread any rumors. So just wanted to touch on that. Again, very big story, lots of turns. And we'll, of course, touch on that in a bit, but there's plenty of news taken off out of Winnipeg. So I would have to say, let's just kind of get it out of the way where our very long streak of 3 goals or less that came to an end. And in some cases, I saw in a few Facebook groups too, there were some questions about, well, Bonus, was he doing the right thing? Did he want to preserve the streak, or is he trying to show that he's playing to win by pulling the goalie? And I think he's playing to win. I think streaks, they're great to have, but you play to win. I forget who was it that said you play
Herb
to
Edwards,
the game.
you play to win the game.
Yes. And I mean, that saying rings true. And I think again that he could probably give a rip less about streaks.
No, and they were playing to win. They were playing to win. They were in Boston against a very tough Boston team, against a tough Boston crowd. Actually, I was listening to this on the radio on my way home from some things I was doing on Monday night. Heard them with about 7 minutes to go in the third. Hey, look, Boston's got a power play. I'm like, you know what's going to happen? Boston's going to score here. We'll be down 2. They'll pull the goalie, and Boston will score their 4th. And that's exactly what ended up happening. I didn't even have to see it to know what was going to happen then.
Yeah, and I mean, Boston's a tough team, and I mean every team is going to have their off night, and of course, when you're playing another top team, you want to be on your game, you want to be on your A game, but especially when you have those injuries, I mean, yeah, of course, the Jets, we talk until we're blue in the face about how deep the team is, that where depth is thrown around so much, but at the end of the day, when your injury report is this thick, there's obviously going to be some issues that you run into when you play a powerhouse like Boston.
Yeah, and then they're also going into 2 games against Toronto, one being really soon after we record here, so we're not going to have details on Wednesday's game. You'll probably be listening to this on Thursday or later Wednesday night. You already know what's happening. We don't yet, so you don't know, so we can't say anything. But they go into Toronto tonight and then host Toronto on Saturday. Tonight, at least, they're down Shifley and Villardi. Hopefully, they're back for Saturday. Sounds
And
like it's a day-to-day thing.
Yeah, and I was just about to touch on that too with the Shifley situation. I'm hoping that this doesn't turn into an Ehlers situation where it was day to day, became week to week, and seemingly became month to month. And of course, you don't want to send someone out there when they're not ready yet because then it becomes a much larger issue. But I mean, still, you want to see one of your top playmakers. Like we said, Shifley's a point per game guy this year, so that's a big loss. I mean, you got Kyle Connor back, which is great, and you have a very deep team, but still losing one of your most tenured players to a day-to-day injury that keeps going on. Of course, that's going to make an impact.
Yeah, it definitely hurts. It really hurts them because they've lost a lot of chemistry between different players coming in and out of the lineup. It's going to be hard to recover what they've had. They've had this wonderful long streak of being really tight defensively, really solid core. Got to find a way to get that back. Now, we do have All-Star Weekend coming up, so a few players get to rest, a few players get to go. So we'll have to see how the rest would. The rest seems to be coming at a good time for Winnipeg. Even like a week ago, I'm like, do we have to do the All-Star break? Everything's clicking all cylinders, but right now, maybe it's a good time for it.
Oh, and the best teams they face adversity, and it's what you do. All teams, I should say, face adversity, and it's a matter of what you do with it. And the best teams overcome that adversity, and for the most part, the Jets have been able to do that. And let's not put the cart before the horse. Sure, we lost a streak. Sure, we lost a game, by multiple goals, but that doesn't mean that the sky is falling. Like they could still bounce back, and a win in Toronto, that would be huge, carrying that momentum back home and being able to put together another streak going into the All-Star break. And then, like you had said, the rest is coming at pretty much the perfect time. And, you hope that those guys rest up, they heal up, and then just take the second half of the season by storm.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've had injuries all from the beginning of the season. They've had players in and out of the lineup. It, just having a little bit of time to refocus, recharge the batteries. It's a long season. It's really hard to do what they've done so far, and it'll be nice for them to get a nice break, take all the weight off their shoulders for a few days, and then come back firing.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, sure, the defense might not have been there as great, but let's just keep in mind how much of a powerhouse Boston is, on offense too. And the question is now, Toronto, is that going to be an issue? I know they're a very top heavy team, and one can argue that they always have an AHL goalie because they can't afford, anybody with how much they pay their top, what is it? The big four that they have or what, five that have like 80 or $40 million. I keep getting the numbers mixed up because I don't have them in front of me right now, but was it 40 million between like four or five players?
Yeah, they're very top heavy, like you said. Right. And I'd love to come out of the back-to-back with Toronto with a split. That'd be great because they are very, very talented. The top four are getting paid for a reason.
Yes, absolutely.
If the Jets could get back to their defensive play, if they could find a way to grind out a couple of low-scoring victories, that'd be great. It seems to be the way they've had to do it because the scoring hasn't been quite as electric as it has been. But honestly, if we're going to lose the streak and it was going to happen eventually, I'm glad it was to a team like Boston, in Boston, as opposed to just laying an egg against like an Anaheim or something like that, just coming out flat.
San Jose at home.
Bad enough to lose 2-1.
Yeah, that'd be embarrassing.
Yeah.
But now, this kind of alludes to what we were talking about last week too, where, we were talking about should we touch this team, at the trade deadline. But when we are injury depleted like that, and of course going into the postseason, if you want to make that run all the way to the cup, you're going to play teams that are on par, if not better, with Boston. It's likely at this point in the season. Of course, we're just a little more than halfway through. But at this point, it looks like Vancouver is going to be the team to beat, at least one of them in the Western Conference. So do you, just in case we do have more injuries, and sure we have the depth, but do you think that maybe we should try and exhaust a little bit of that depth for the sake of getting another big score? So one guy goes down, you have another one that's there to step up.
Wouldn't hurt, and there's some cap room to play with this year. But in coming years, some of the young players are going to need raises, so you're probably not going to be looking for somebody long term. So if you could find a good deal out there, something that makes sense, great. But this group is built to go on to and win in the future too. So don't sell the farm just for this one shot.
Sure. And, maybe I think what would be a good move is something like what Kevin Hayes was supposed to be upon his arrival. Remember, of course, might not have. Okay, maybe we'll say this. Maybe not what Kevin Hayes was supposed to be, but what a Stastny was. Like,
Yeah,
not your
that
biggest name,
changed. That
but
changed that team.
yeah, like that. He just, he fit, and it was really sad when he went to Vegas. But and it was funny because I'll admit, I was one of those that would give him the boo bird every time that he touched the puck, just because I felt a little slighted because of how much he was to that team, and then just to leave to go to the team that beat us in the Western Conference Final. And then for him to come back, his first game back, I was like, okay, it's like he never left.
Yeah, we did have Stastny round two, if I remember correctly, as well.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't quite go as well as the first.
No, but I mean, it was nice to see him back, and apparently Nate Schmidt had a lot to do with that because they played together in Vegas, and then when he went to Vancouver, obviously Stastny didn't go with him there, but Schmidt ends up in Winnipeg, and Stastny's in free agency, and says, "Hey, come back here."
Yeah, I guess the question I have about making a big move is it going to be a buyer's market or a seller's market? Because if it's a buyer's market, I'd feel a lot more likely to say, okay, we'll pay a little bit below retail and make an addition. But if it becomes a seller's market, how much extra do you throw on top to get a piece you might not necessarily need?
True. And
But we do have time too. Isn't the trade deadline about a month away at this point?
about that, yeah. But
Right. The
it's
rumor mills
it's
are just starting to crank up.
yeah, and it's nice to think about, like, one thing that I've noticed with this team too is, like, I don't know, it must be the system that they have in place because you don't Chevy never really gets the big name. Like, he's not going to go for the Patrick Kane at the trade deadline. Watch, I say that and things happen, but he's not going to go for, like the big name that's out there. But he'll bring in some guy that, like we said, Stastny, for example, who very talented and could be second, even first line on some teams. But just the way that they gel with that system, it blows my mind how they can play like one of those elite players in this system.
Yeah, and I do know Calgary's got some decisions to make on a few of their upcoming free agents. So how their next month goes and whether they're going to make a playoff run and try to add or sell is going to determine a lot of how the market's going to play out.
Now, speaking of former Calgary Flame, what would you think? Because this, of course, like I said, we don't spread rumors. This is more speculation. It's a what if, but there have been some uh, ties to the name Sean Monahan, and I tell you, he is one guy that I would actually love to see in this system. I think that he would thrive.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's what I was saying earlier is it just depends on how much of a market there is for him. If
Sure.
they're adamant
Yeah.
on trading him, and they're not getting a lot of bites, I like discounts. I mean,
Hmm.
I'll take it there. I just don't know if I've been seeing first round pick attached to his name, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that. I like that the team is built to compete in the next 5 years.
Hmm.
And I just don't want to throw away. I might think about throwing away a first rounder if the team's only got 2 years left on their window. But right now, that window is wide open.
That's also true. Now, yeah, the first round might be attached to his name and everything, but you think about the depth that we already have, and you might be able to, if obviously this could be a situation where he's more than a rental, in which case he's not old either. So, I mean, he could still contribute to the future too. So I think
Yeah, if
that,
you're getting more than a couple months out of them, it might help too.
yeah. So should be interesting. I like, for example, we were talking about this before about how Nino Niederreiter is trying to change that view, that predisposition of Winnipeg to everyone else by saying how it's such a great hockey city to play for and why he wanted to stay. He wasn't going to be a rental, he was going to stay here. And, you have another guy like Nemesnikov, for example. He loves the city, he loves the team, and he produces obviously when he's healthy. And, anyways, I mean, I think that there's something to be said about that, and the culture may be changing, and we've thrown that term around before too, the culture change.
Yeah, we can certainly hope that if the Jets do make a move, it's not just for a rental, it's for a player that could stick for longer than a couple months. Batters fly forever, though. So if they do end up adding a rental and win a cup, I always forgive it, even if it turns out the pick we trade is a future Hall of Famer, well, that banner flies forever. So like
That is very
some,
true.
yeah, sometimes you have to make the painful decisions, and I just don't know quite yet if it's required. But we're at the beginning of the silly trade season, so it's time to start thinking that way.
And also, like, keep in mind, and I mean, this is definitely what's on the front of a GM's mind. I've armchair GM over here, of course, but like, you think about it, when you have a position that you're in where you're one of the top teams, your first round pick's not like it's going to be a top 10, so of course you're still, a first round is still huge. Let's not, downplay
Yeah,
that one.
the further you get, the worse that pick gets. So
Hmm.
if you're gonna make a move, make it pay off.
Yeah. And I mean, that you see this all the time too. You can make it a conditional first, like, hey, if we get to say the Western Conference final, even, or if we make the final, then it becomes a first round pick, or if not, then it's a second round pick, so on and so forth. So that could sweeten the pot a little bit too.
Yeah, it certainly could. There's a lot of creativity that they could use, and the Jets have cap space this year. If they maybe they pay a little bit less to take on more of a cap hit.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm pretty optimistic about how things are going as far as the Jets are concerned. Sure, lost a big one to Boston, but end of the day, it was a powerhouse. But they're also an Eastern Conference team too.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You'll take those losses a little bit easier than you'll take a loss to say Vegas or especially a divisional rival
absolutely.
or
Now,
Vegas. Not that I'm bitter or
yes,
anything.
yeah, I was going to say I had this conversation actually earlier today about my least favorite teams, and Vegas is always up there. And I think it all stems from that Western Conference final in Vegas's inaugural year.
Yeah,
Oh
not a
well,
fan of theirs.
yeah, neither am I. But we've got a little more than Jets news to talk about today on the Winnipeg terminal. There is plenty of stuff going on with the Bombers. So let's talk about first. Let's maybe some would look at this as bigger news, and some may say it's the not the biggest news out of all of the Bombers news that we have. But Zach Collaros on Sunday Night Football in the press box with T Swift.
And every time he'd come on screen, and of course they're showing Taylor Swift, they're showing Jason Kelsey, but you see Zach in the background, and every time it's like insert Terrell Owens, that's my quarterback. .gif.
That's exactly how it felt. And that I saw all the memes on Facebook and everything too, saying that I guess Taylor Swift is going to be at all the Bombers games now.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get quite that lucky, but
I don't think so either.
1 degree of Taylor Swift, Zach Claros could claim that.
That is just so funny, though. Like, I mean, of course, the Taylor Swift and Jason Kelsey too, but that was actually really nice to see Jason support his brother like that too. Like, he wasn't just there in street clothes; he was wearing the Chiefs beanie too. And I couldn't read what his shirt said when he had it on. Anyways, I couldn't read what it said.
Yeah, I did start watching until his shirt was off. So what we need to do though, is we need to get Jason Kelsey, and you remember the Ottawa center a while back that pounded a beer on the field, John Gott, the John Gott look like. Yes, we need to get those two together for a beer drinking contest.
I think another one that you might appreciate for this is we can get them and then David Bakhtiari.
Okay, I'm in.
Because what was it? I think it was at a Bucks game that Aaron Rodgers is there and he's just like slowly drinking his beer and trying to chug it, and then Bakhtiari sees him and just throws it back.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, we could make this fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots that we could do with that. But now on to other Bombers news. What's going on with Investors Group Field?
It's going to become Princess Auto Stadium. So instead of being
turf?
They're changing the turf. They're changing the name of the turf.
Mm-hmm.
We're working diligently as a Bomber fan base on what pithy nickname we could give it instead of calling it Princess Auto Stadium. It seems like the toolbox is winning so far, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, just call it the Princess. Just live with it. Call it Barbie's World or whatever.
The throne room. The throne room is out there.
Oh, that sounds like
it works. It works even better when they're the champs, but
yeah,
we'll get back there.
Yeah, maybe next year. Well, 2025. That's where they're going all in, of course.
That's the hope.
I'm just hoping that. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was saying I was hoping that they can actually make something materialize out of that, but it's just we'll have to see.
Yeah, that seems to be what they're aiming for. Stanley Bryant's coming back, like we mentioned last week. Drew Wolodarski's in for the next 2 years. Always good to have him.
That's huge.
Have him around. He is, for watching the Bombers in the mid 2010s, where they had nobody at Canadian receiver, to going from that to Dembski and Wolodarski. That's a winning combination there.
Oh, absolutely. And what are your thoughts? Who do you think is going to be their biggest challenge this year? Because I think that of course it's January, but based off of what we've done in the offseason and what other teams have done, what are your thoughts on who the team to beat is? Because I'll be honest, I don't know if the Bombers are going to be the team to beat. I would hope that that's the case, of course, but I want to get your thoughts on this.
Well, BC's been nipping at our heels the last couple of years. Almost took the West in a couple different ways, but that late October Midnight Classic was fun. It was great to see the Bombers come out on top on that, come out on top in the West Final. So BC is going to be knocking on the door. Edmonton's a couple years away. Calgary's a couple years away. Saskatchewan, who knows, depending on which way they go. It really feels like it's Winnipeg and BC for the next 2 years. And BC's got additional motivation this year with it Grey Cup being in Vancouver this year. Ottawa's taken some steps to climb out of the basement. They traded for Drew Brown's rights for a fifth-round pick, so Winnipeg got something for nothing because they weren't going to.
He was going to walk anyways,
right? And then Brown signed with Ottawa officially today, so he's there. Made a lot of other moves. Their receiving corps starting to climb back up. Montreal's going to be a threat. Toronto's going to be a threat. I mean, really, the only team that doesn't seem all that threatening this next year out east is Hamilton, because they just seem to want to keep running it back, and they keep climbing down the standings while they're doing that. So, I mean, Toronto went 16-2. They played their worst game of the season in the playoffs, so they're going to be a threat. Montreal's the champs. You can never discredit that.
Right.
Ottawa's got a ways to go, but they're making the right steps now, finally.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was a little heartbreaking. But, Hamilton, they almost kind of remind me of what Chicago, the Blackhawks were before they finally decided to blow it up.
Where they were just stagnant, and they were just they were fine sitting at 9-9 every year, or 8-10, and just never finding the way to climb up or climb down.
And there's something to be said about wanting to keep a team together for the sake of chemistry, because sure, you get a little bit of experience together. You don't really shake up the roster too much. You do get that chemistry, but when that chemistry doesn't really get you anywhere, I mean, you're going to have to make some changes at that point.
I understood why they stuck it out last year, because they were getting the game in Hamilton again in 2023. That's why they made the trade for Mitchell's rights. That's why they tried to make him the starter, even though he kept getting hurt. So they ended up having Taylor Powell play quite a lot of the season, look pretty decent, something to build on. But now they're bringing Mitchell back. I'm gonna need to see what they do in free agency before I'm gonna have much positive to say, honestly. Because they do need to make changes. They don't have the excuse of let's try one more time with what we've got. We had a down year last year. Well, now you've had 2 straight down years, so fix it. Or don't. I mean,
or don't.
Very, very happy.
Yeah. What I mean, I like some of the moves that we've made thus far. What other moves would you like to see Winnipeg make to kind of get us to return to the Grey Cup again, in this year and hopefully for 2025?
I think getting Brady back is the first thing. If I had to make a choice, I have the money for either Brady Oliveira or Dalton Schoen, and I love me some Dalton Schoen, believe me. But between the two, I'm taking Brady because he's such a unique fit for what we do. You get a Canadian back like that, you're breaking the ratio.
Oh yeah.
Teams can't spread it out against all your receiving talent. They'll find somebody to fill Dalton Schoen's shoes. He was out for a chunk last year. Kenny was out for a chunk last year. But they kept finding players to make plays. But Brady would be so much tougher to replace than Dalton Schoen would be.
Yeah, I'd have to agree on that. But
I'd also like to see their offensive line. They still got a couple offensive linemen that are unsigned. I'd like to see them bring that back because that offensive line has been a unit the past couple of years.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's honestly one of the biggest reasons why. All the time to pass, all of the holes for running too. It's just incredible what job they've done.
Oh yeah. And the offensive line coach has coached at Stevens Point, so he's got a little bit of a local feel for us too.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of Wisconsin connections to the Bombers. Just the fact that, of course, Stevens Point and the Packers played at what did you call it? The throne room? There we go. So
that they did.
What was it? The Raiders, I think they played.
Yeah, that's when the Raiders had decided they were going to leave Oakland, but hadn't, made arrangements to leave Oakland yet. Can we have this?
Raiders.
Can we have this date for a preseason game? No, go away. You're not staying here anyway. Okay, we'll farm them out to throw a dart at the map. Okay, that place.
It's kind of like the Oakland Athletics now, the lame duck athletics.
Yeah, for like 4 or 5 years, the way they're playing it.
Yeah, that whole situation just seems amiss to me. Like, I think it's funny all the fans saying like, sell the team and everything because they want it's maybe too little, too late because no one shows up to those games, and all of a sudden they did that reverse boycott where they packed the stadium just to try to get them to sell the team. And it's like
Just to show them we're here if you give us a product. You haven't given us a
yeah,
product in years. Like we
hmm
get it, you pitch pennies, you do the money ball thing, you try to find unique ways to contend, but like eventually you got to throw a little bit of money around, right? And they
yeah.
never did.
I love how we went from talking Bombers to the Oakland Athletics, one of the most irrelevant teams in sports.
That's yeah. I mean, the whole Bay Area is just having, besides the San Francisco 49ers and the San Francisco Giants, they've been
Yeah,
kind of, things haven't been going so well for them lately.
yeah, and talking about the 49ers now, why does Brock Purdy get so much hate at this point? Like that guy has done everything that's asked of him. And sure, he does have some very good receivers and he has CMC as his running back. So like of course he has the weapons around, but like I mean you have a guy like Kenny Pickett on the Steelers. Yes, I'm picking at my own team here. But he has some playmakers around him. He has Warren, Harris, Pickens, Johnson, Fryermuth, Washington. And so he has a very good receiving core and very good running backs. But Pickett has just not been it. I don't want to talk too ill of him, but he just doesn't seem to have the stuff that Brock Purdy does.
Well, and Brock Purdy was competing against Trey Lance, who was a third overall pick in the draft at one point, and beat him out. So, I mean,
Sad
that
North
if that
Dakota
doesn't
State product, too.
if that doesn't tell you that he has some talent, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, the Packers had almost a similar thing happen where they had Matt Flynn, a seventh rounder, beat out Brian Brom, a former Bomber, second round pick, to be Rodgers' main backup for a while. Now, Bomber fans, if they haven't completely blocked their memory of him, will tell you that Brian Brom was not. There was a reason Brian Brom didn't make it.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe you could argue, oh, well, he was learning under Aaron Rodgers.
Usually quarterbacks that go through the Packer system do a little bit better than that.
Yeah, that they do. And well, Jordan Love is proving that too. Spent a few
Yeah, and I
years
mean,
riding the bench.
even all the backups that cycle through Green Bay tend to go somewhere else and do well. So
So what you're saying is now Clifford should go back to Pennsylvania and solve all the Steelers quarterback problems.
sure, why not? I'm okay with that.
He's a Penn State product, so. Oh, well, switching gears from Bombers and Jets and whatever other teams that we've been talking about. We've pretty much covered all sports at this point when this is predominantly a Winnipeg podcast, but
Yes,
just wanted
but
to.
podcasts do go this way and that way from time to time. It's just the
Oh,
nature of the beast.
absolutely. And now to kind of land this plane a bit, just wanted to finish up talking about our introductions into hockey. And Joe, I'll have you go first.
The first time I remember being introduced to hockey was back in a day where college sports weren't quite as much of a commodity as they are now. The first hockey game I remember ever seeing was when the Wisconsin Badgers were on the local PBS stations at 10:30 at night, being not even live. They would tape the game and put it on after they put it on at 10:30 at night. So
Wow.
anytime the Badgers had a home game, basketball, football, hockey, and I mean they were garbage in every sport except for hockey at this point. They would put them on at 10:30, and so my dad would work nights, but on Fridays he'd be home early, which would be like 9 o'clock. So we would stay up and watch whatever was on TV, which is, hey, this is how I got into the CFL. That's why I'm talking to you here. It's because Friday nights in the summer in the 90s, oh, look, there's a CFL game. Let's go. But 10:30s on Fridays and Saturday nights would be some sort of Badger game. And the first Badger hockey game I remember, there was this guy named Joseph playing goaltender. And it's like, I know that name. I like that name. Turned out he was a pretty good player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was just okay.
Just okay. Yeah. So I mean, that was the first time I remember ever seeing hockey. I mean, I probably stayed up for like a period before I crashed, but asked all the questions.
Sure.
What does this mean? What does that mean? What's this? My little boy right now is 6 years old, does the same thing. So
Gonna get into
passing
it
it
himself.
down generation to generation.
Well, that's kind of cool. I like that story.
Yeah, might have even been against St. Cloud State, but I can't say that for sure.
Oh, you had to do that.
No, St. Cloud State might have won that game for all I know.
That's fair.
I don't remember a dang bit about it. I just remember that goalie's name because it was my name.
Sure. Well, I guess that makes sense. But now mine was, so I learned how to ice skate when I was 3 years old. And it was funny because my mom took me to these lessons and they had all the kids that were like my age or whatever. And not to say that I was the world's greatest skater because I was probably like any other 3-year-old, but I always watched like the older kids that were doing the learning how to skate. And they were like doing more than just like, bubbles with your feet like that or whatever. They were turning backwards. They were doing the snowplow stop and everything. And so I was like, I want to, go with these kids. So I kept gravitating towards them. And then like the instructors would pull me back in with my age group and everything. And then also my dad, huge Penguins fan. He had from the 1991 Stanley Cup final, the Penguins versus the North Stars. And he had this really nice picture of, I want to say maybe it was Yager, maybe it was Straka or someone. I don't think it was Lemieux because I feel like I would know that, but was like on a breakaway. And it was this picture from behind the North Stars goalie. And anyways, I was like asking him, I was like, oh, were you at this game? I was a little kid, of course. So like, I think that he took the picture. And anyways, like I'm asking him all about it. And he gives me this really long answer about like how the Penguins were really struggling. And then all of a sudden they get these superstar guys that, come out of the blue, Mario Lemieux, Jaromir Jagr, and I was like, these names are kind of fun. I didn't end up liking the Penguins, of course, but I just started to get into hockey, just seeing the excitement in my dad. And then it kind of made me excited like that too.
Yep. And so it sounds like we both have similar stories, just different pathways to getting there.
Yeah. Mine was a picture and yours was a game.
Yep. Yep, we also had the little we also had table hockey from like the 70s too.
Oh yes.
I think
like the bubble hockey?
No bubble on it, just the table, just the
levers sure.
And such. That table got ruined because I mean, you give it to a 6-year-old and leave it until he's 12, 13, he's gonna beat on it for time and time again, which is too bad because one of the teams was Montreal and one of the teams was the Oakland Seals. So that might have been worth a little bit of money had I taken better care of it. But by the time I got it, it was already a little bit beat up already. So,
oh my gosh, that's kind of funny. Yeah.
Now I have a table hockey one from like the mid '90s with the NHL logos and the Wales and the Campbell Conference on there. So,
oh, that's kind of cool though.
Yep, that's also taken a little bit of a beating, but it's still functional.
What teams are there? So, you said it was
just the All-Star, logo or the league logo and the All-Star jerseys.
Sure. I was going to say if you had like a Hartford Whalers and like a Quebec Nordiques or something like that might be worth some money.
Yeah, I did want other teams, but it just didn't work out.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Just a bit because the game would have been right in that time frame too, so it would have been great.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh well, any other last minute topics you want to clear up? we've kind of hit everything. Taylor Swift, we hit the Oakland Athletic. Yeah, everything from Taylor Swift to the
We've
Oakland
hit the
Athletic.
Oakland Athletics and the Oakland Seals. So,
yeah.
And speaking of which, we also hit on those North
Raiders.
Stars.
And the North
we hit
Stars.
The Raiders. We hit the North Stars that split and became the North Stars and the Sharks. Same ownership as, they basically were a rebirth of the Seals if you follow the money. So
that's also true.
We've hit a lot of points tonight in only 40 minutes somehow.
I am actually impressed with that. All right.
I'll take my victories when I can get them.
I think so too. And that would be it for the Winnipeg Terminal. We are clear for landing for the dub. Go Jets, go.